Well, each week a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week sounding off on a planned $26 million hotel and conference center and museum in downtown Kokomo. Purdue to lead an autonomous vehicle research project. And a popular watering hole lands some funding. Our insiders this week are IndyPolitics.org publisher Abdul-Hakim Shabazz. Also, Harmless Consulting's Mike Harmless. And WGU Advancement President Allison Barber. And welcome one and all to the Insiders, another edition. We'll start out, interesting, a number of stories, I think, impacting either rural Indiana or smaller communities around the state. A story we had this week in the Inside Edge and on our statewide radio platform, OCRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, getting federal funds, $54 million. They're getting a $30 million share of $54 million in federal funds going to communities for infrastructure, for economic development, for downtown development. Much needed in the state. Much needed.
I've traveled the state, we all have, and you see that where there's investment that is strategic, the city flourishes. So whether, and we were talking about it, the infrastructure has to be not just buildings and roads, it has to be digital infrastructure. And we see this at WGU. Our students are farmers who, if they don't have the digital infrastructure, they can't leave their rural community and get to a school. And so I think it's exciting to see that we spread a little bit of our focus outside of the main hubs of the Fort Wayne and Evansville and Indy. And we said, well, our strength in our state is the rural community.
Also, I think too, like Allison said, doing a lot of traveling and playing lawyer and going to a lot of smaller rural communities to take care of some legal matters. You can see when the bridges are closed because they're being rebuilt and remodeled. It's like, okay, it takes a little bit out of your way, but that's a good thing. But I do think still the challenge is going to be predominantly for a lot of rural areas is to continue thinking forward. And for example, not everything that is a innkeeper's tax or food and beverage tax is automatically a bad thing. It's help you generate revenue so you can attract those types of businesses and development, whether it be infrastructure or digital that they want to do.
Mike, as you look at it, a big chunk of money, $30 million. But your take, because I'm of the opinion that important to be strategic about it, not just to give that money out. Certain communities have vision, have leadership that can execute the vision to make this thing happen, where others, frankly, don't.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that the state needs to be very wise in the distribution of this money. If a community is not willing to invest in itself, then that should be a red flag saying, well, now is that where we want to put our money, or do we want the community to invest in itself first and then build on top of that with following a strategic plan or some sort of vision they have for the community. I think in the past the state has tried to invest in some of these communities and it just hasn't worked out as well because they weren't going to.
Right. One community that has had, I think, and continues to have a vision for what they want to become is Kokomo. And we've had Mayor Greg Goodnight on the show a number of times, just a few weeks ago, on momentum in a variety of areas in their downtown and investment there. And they just unveiled this week plans for a $26 million convention center and hotel in downtown.
Well, when I was still at Crow, Greg Goodnight was a client. And it was a joy to go up and be a part of those meetings. One, the first thing he did was he got his finances in order because it was a mess. Then he did a huge annexation to make sure that the tax were spread across a larger group. Now he's got all this money. They balanced the budget. The municipal stadium is spectacular. And he's one of my favorite mayors. I mean, he gets it, and he builds consensus, and then they move forward.
Another project this week along those lines, ground broken for a new Brown County concert venue, a $12.3 million Maple Leaf Performing Arts Center, major investment, 2,000-seat venue. Abdul, that will be funded by an innkeeper's tax in the county. It's going to be a community-owned facility, but again, funded by the tax. Back to your point, communities, Terre Haute just passed a food and beverage tax. So those communities with a vision and wanting to get things done sometimes have to make tough decisions.
Sometimes you got to make the tough decisions, and I'm just sort of thinking where a lot of these communities were just sort of 10 years ago, almost sort of teetering on the brink of being wiped out into non-existence. But there's the right type of smart leadership. And I've known Greg forever. He's a good guy, a good friend. When people say, I want to build this and build this, at first they looked at him like he's crazy. Now you may still look at him like he's crazy, but hey, at least the guy's got a vision, and he's putting Kokomo sort of back on the map. So like I said, where it was 10 years ago, teeter on the blink of oblivion.
Yeah, big project in Indianapolis. Want to get a quick take on him from you, Abdul. Community Justice Center, that campus, groundbreaking happened this week, been talked about for a long time. I think this first phase is $55 million at the old Citizens Energy Coke plant. Your thoughts said that now ground has been broken and construction underway.
Obviously, Indianapolis has needed to do something about its criminal justice system for a long time. I've always been very skeptical of that side. I mean, I understand what the mayor's folks are doing, though. It's centrally located, easy to get to on a bus line. I still think you could have done the same thing at a Lafayette Square or out near the airport or the old GM stamping plant. But if Indianapolis really wants to take care of its long-term crime issues, we're going to have to really address mental health. And the other thing, too, that Indianapolis is really going to have to do is deal with the system of bail, and how do we incarcerate people and how long do we keep them? Because that's where a lot of your overcrowding issue comes from. If you can manage your bail system, usually you can manage just about everything else.
And obviously those are long-term.
Yeah, those are long-term. And unfortunately, none of this has anything to do with sort of the rising perception of the crime problem in town.
Right. Also this week, news from a perception standpoint on Indiana in terms of best states for doing business. CNBC out with what it gets a lot of publicity each and every year. Its ranking of the top states for business. Indiana dropped. I mean, it was fairly insignificant. They were 14th last year. Indiana as a state, 16th this year.
Yeah, I think what's important to check on with this report is that it's not really scientific. And so when we look at what it's saying about Indiana, there are some really good stories there. Business friendly, our cost of living, the things that we're doing that are really being done well. I was just speaking at a lieutenant governor's conference. Lieutenant governors from all over the country, what's their number one issue? Workforce. It's everywhere. Yeah. But like Mike, so we've been working on this issue. So we've got businesses, we've got chambers, we have Ivy Tech and schools and colleges, and all of our community is coming together, and we're not new to this. The governor just brought 300 new business commitments to our state this year, 30,000 new jobs. What do I know about Indiana? Every time we have vision and a strategy, Hoosiers rise to the occasion. I think we're on a right path.
Yeah, and also something that stood out to me in that report, Indiana was ranked 48th in quality of life. And I don't know if that I don't know what that would get to, but maybe it's some of the rural areas and smaller areas.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty subjective. I mean, if all they did was, look for places where the quality of life maybe isn't where it should be. I mean, it's a work in progress. Every community has got Greencastle it didn't just start yesterday. It started 25 years ago with a plan.
And I visited the Bridges, which is a new restaurant downtown, and it's part of really is a transformation downtown.
Oh, Greencastle, cool. But all communities are doing that. Greencastle is going to become a foodie destination.
But that survey measured how states market themselves. That's the survey was looking, how do we market ourselves? So maybe we need to change our narrative.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Good. One area that has been challenged, frankly, in recent years with the decline in manufacturing and some of those challenges is Muncie and East Central Indiana. We saw another story from Muncie this week. New Jersey-based Newell Brands closing its doors. They provide containers, including ball jars, for companies there. A lot of jobs lost there, but part of a kind of a bigger picture. On the flip side, we saw the formation of Next Muncie, which is the business community, the academic community, is coming together to say, hey, let's do something about this.
Gary, let's not be surprised.
Yep.
So we are in a state of transformation. Jobs are changing, innovation is happening. We see it in every story we've talked about today. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to us that some businesses are going to step backwards while others emerge, and people need to equip themselves for the new jobs. Our whole state is invested in this. And so I think while it's sad to see a business close, communities are coming together to say, how do we revitalize? How do we give Hoosiers new opportunities? But this shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah. Your take on this with Muncie, Abdul, because the Ball State's new president, Jeff Mearns, has talked a lot about wanting to connect the university to the community.
Right, and what Dr. Muntz is doing, which I think is really, really smart, which is sort of you got Ball State sort of being the catalyst for a lot of this change, for a lot of bringing the folks in, from the business community. I think a lot of it really did start with Ball State takeover of Muncie schools, because ask any mayor, you can't run a city unless if you have bad schools, and if you have bad schools, all the other things sort of fall into place. So, but Ball State sort of taking the lead, I think this is really good for the Muncie area, and also gives sort of a focal point for these folks to all come together and work together to improve not only Muncie but all of Delaware County and that entire region.
Yeah, and I think Ivy Tech has been very, very engaged up there, but Ball State really hadn't. So now you're going to have a lot of opportunities for collaboration. I know Ron Fokker is up there, and you've just got great industry and great people, in and around the community, and getting them all work together and getting a vision and a strategy and moving it forward, and the community will get back on its feet.
It's not your father's Muncie anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, we're watching that story. Part of any redevelopment and revitalization is vibrancy in the community, and it's interesting to look at how sometimes craft breweries and craft distilleries are part of that renovation and rebirth in some cities. Hotel Tango is a craft artisan distillery in Indianapolis, several years old, just landed $2 million in funding, which is not an insignificant amount. That's a lot of money to get this brand not only cooking even more so here, but extended out into other markets.
And it demonstrates the innovation that we have in our city and state, and the entrepreneurial spirit, that people are willing to try new things and people are willing to invest in them. That's why the friendly business culture that survey talks about, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I got to go over there and try the gin. I hear it's
And they sell that gin. You're talking about
Hotel
expanding out into
Tango
other
Gin is
markets.
available at Tap House 24 in Greencastle. So if anybody's
Sponsored by.
near,
Yes.
sponsored
Well,
by.
yes. Well, I'll make sure I have my Uber driver with me when I go over and swing by.
Absolutely.
Putnam County. Okay. As we wrap up with sports, as we usually do, Colts training camp about to kick off. Will be kicking off very soon in a new location in Westfield. Big news there at Grand Park. A 10-year deal to move the Colts training camp there. They're seeing putting on the finishing touches for the Colts. So that'll be a big thing for Westfield.
And again, it's all about leadership. I mean, the mayor up there is spectacular. He is just, and Todd Bertrand is great.
WGU alum.
GU alum,
very
there you go,
good. Yeah,
good.
nice.
But I think in visiting with them and spending time with them over the years, they had a vision, and all they're doing now is executing.
Yeah, and this brings a whole new
It's going to be
group
unbelievable.
to the community.
It's
yeah.
just going to be spectacular.
Westfield is not just soccer anymore.
No.
That's right. Yeah, a lot more than that, to be sure. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Mike Harmless, Allison Barber, thanks one and all for being on this edition of The Insiders, and we'll be right back after this.